how do you kind of have the resilience to keep going despite maybe not everything magically working out how you want it to?
One of the tools that has been most impactful for me in flipping it from failure to learning is called the competency framework. Just because you don't know anything doesn't mean you're bad, doesn't mean you're wrong. You just haven't learned it yet. And then you're incrementally gaining competency until you can reach a mastery level.
Alex, thanks for coming on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit here?
Sure.
Who is
I'm Alex Porter. I am the CEO of Montech Labs. We are an automated optimization solution specifically focused on the look and the quality and the playback of real-time content, primarily for virtual production these days, but real-time content is in a lot of industries. I'm also a mom of 2 little humans, and I am the co-founder of this company with my husband, who is my CTO. So we have a lot of apples in one basket, and we're excited. We've been working in emerging tech for the better part of 8 years with our own companies. And prior to that, my background is actually interior design and construction tech. So the visualization of places and spaces, AutoCAD and Revit. And then I was also a nanny and a doula for about 15 years. So I was very much in the on the people side of the world instead of the tech side of the world. And so I think that helps me humanize what we do a lot more, and hopefully, is what has assisted me in building, some really strong, amazing relationships in this industry, and ideally creating long-term success.
I love it. You definitely have the co-founder and founder many hats and many experiences to kind of back you up. So you said real-time content. Give the audience, who are your clients, and then how would they use Montech?
Absolutely. So real-time content is also, what is known as the content that you see in a game engine. So Unreal, Unity are 2 of the biggest game engines out there. When you're playing a game, whether it is Fortnite or something else, you are in a persistent world. So it means it always exists. It just depends on where you're looking, which parts you see. And so you're in this digital world, you're running around, you're going to different levels, and you can use that same type of technology to create environments and what we call scenes often for film production. And so in film production, there is a massive transition happening and opportunities opening up to use that type of digital content, real-time content, on LED walls. So LED walls are essentially, you take big screens, you place them together. They're upwards of 150 feet long. They typically have a curve to them so that you're a little more encompassed by the lighting and the environment itself when you're on the stage. Sometimes they have top panels or bottom panels that also help sort of bring the lighting in. So you're getting natural lighting from the digital environment itself. Your actors and actresses and your props and your physical things are all much more immersed in what's happening on the set versus a green screen where they would go in after everything was filmed and they would replace the green with digital content. And so one of the other ways that we typically describe it is it's an industry which was more on the VFX side or post-production side. It's an industry that is going from 60 frames a month to 60 frames a second. So it's a huge technical leap. It's a massive opportunity. We are working at these days with more the virtual production stage side. So some examples of that is Orbital Studios, Zero Space Studios, different coasts, LA and New York in these cases. There's View, and then there's Disguise. Though they have several stages sort of across the world. And then there's other companies that are doing this. Some of them are individual stages. Some of them are larger brands or franchise stages. And then even studios like NBC Universal, Warner Brothers, they're working with virtual production as well for their internal projects. And we have some relationships with them as well. And, excuse me. And we're really excited about the opportunity that this world is bringing, and where Mod sits is making it easier to take that content that's being built by a content creator, an Unreal artist, and make it play back on the screen. So it needs to work at frame rate so that if you're moving the scene, it looks great. It doesn't have any warbles. It doesn't have any, moving or blurry parts in camera. And then we also, are really functionally speeding up the process of making it functional. So it's not a person having to do it for days. It's a machine algorithm that is doing it over the course of a few minutes or a few hours.
I mean, it's fascinating. I recently watched a kind of behind the scenes look at what are these screens called again? What do you call them?
LED walls
The big
or
LED
volume
walls.
stages.
Thank you. So,
Yeah.
um, behind the scenes of Mandalorian, which I think is one of the bigger kind of IP out there that shot everything
Yes.
this way, and the different aspects of green screen versus this new approach. Um, like you said, it's more immersive, so the actors can see the environment that they're supposed to be in. They're not just staring at a green wall and then having to pretend. So it makes them more believable. It makes the environment more believable. There's no reflections of the green that have to be filtered out. So
Yes.
it's really interesting to see how we're taking technology and we're redefining what it means to create content, and you're kind of building the marketplace and tooling on top of it. My question for you is anytime you're taking something that took a very long period of time and now it's happening way faster. So you said 60 frames a month to 60 frames a second. You're going to piss someone off, right? So someone is used to
Always.
be working for that full month to do it, and now it's happening way faster. So what's the pushback been, if any, or how are you kind of positioning working with Hollywood? You mentioned the Hollywood strike before we started recording. How's that kind of been playing into mod?
Absolutely. So, there is a current debate or question that's out there, are the VFX professionals that have been providing this sort of post production digital content landscape, in the past, are they the right people for real time production? And the general answer is possibly. And the reason that it's not a straight yes is because it's a different set of technology and tools. And so having an understanding of how to do art and create art that runs at that 60 frames a second is very, very different than having something render for months or days. And it's just sort of a huge shift in like technological thinking. I think that absolutely VFX professionals are, I think they're keen, to be honest, to learn these things and figure out how they can integrate in this. Virtual production is still, I would say, on the new side for a market. It's still relatively small. And so, because of that, it's a huge educational opportunity right now. Whether or not you have been in the film industry or whether you were in the game industry, I think that there is an opportunity to sort of bridge that gap because in order for virtual production to be really successful, you actually need the real time side and you need the production side. And they're not necessarily the same skill set, but having people that can start understanding how they go together, where they work together, and how they can effectively be functional as one is really important. And so I'm seeing a lot of continuing education. I'm seeing a lot of, stages that are hosting trainings specifically around how to run LED walls. And I think that it's important to remember that, education is really like the first stage in any sort of market adoption. And it's not just educating the people that are running the screen. It's also educating the people that are running, creating the content because it has to work on that screen. It's educating the directors and the producers and the DP, the directors of photography of how and why and what the opportunities are, because it may not be the right technology for an entire film or an entire show. It might be great for certain use cases within a production. And so, really, sort of helping narrow that down, create the opportunity for learning, engaging, and experimenting is super important. And you're 100% correct that there's a pushback. Typically we see pushback coming from the end user, the artist side, because they think that we're replacing them. And we don't look at ourselves as a replacement for an artist at all. We actually built our tools very intentionally in a way that it gives the artist more bandwidth to do the really heavy lift for creative things. So, for instance, if you have what they call a hero asset, so it's your main character, the thing that is the most beautiful in the scene, the point of interest in a scene, right? That's your hero character or hero object. That is very unlikely that you will ever have an automated solution like ours touch that. You don't, I mean, number one, if it's something, like a recognizable IP from Disney or something like that, you're going to have gone through 97 million approvals to have it anyway. You definitely don't want anything touching it except for the people that know all of the intrinsics of what it needs to be. and how it needs to be presented. And so for us, we go through, we have two sides to our software. One is a stage scanner where we actually scan the stage to understand what their compute power is and what their screen playback is capable of. So we create a benchmark. And then on the other side is the scene side. So we go through the project itself, we do the scene scroll, and we create a list of assets that can be optimized to meet the benchmark for the playback. And so there is a user at the end who selects the assets that are and are not going to be auto optimized by Mod, our tool. That being said, it will continue to populate until they select enough things that it can actually meet that benchmark, because playback and visual quality is super important. And that's the place that we sit. We want to empower them to do these things. The technical nitty gritty of what we do is really redundant, boring processes that have to be done every time, that artists are saddled with, but they're not actually creative in any way, shape, or form. They're mathematical, they're technical, they're scientific. And they have to do with, basically making sure that your compute power is most effective for running this content, right? One sort of example that I give sometimes is, if you're trying to, if you're so templates, if you think about like social media, you're creating a template for, a campaign. You have to have a certain size for Twitter. You have to have a certain size for Facebook. You have to have a certain size for Instagram, and they can only have XYZ type of content. Your video can't be over 25 megabytes for a transfer. Those are all parameters that are technical and boring for you to be able to do that cool creative thing that you're trying to do. And where we sit is helping to make that process more efficient in something that's really, really complicated, which is 3D.
I mean, that's super fascinating. And the constraints that you're working with are hardware, right? It's the physical compute power of the stage, of the LED wall. And then not only are you kind of taking in and identifying what those constraints are, you're also taking the digital assets, and not only you're making sure that the digital assets fit within those parameters, you're also pushing the envelope so they render and they are as beautiful or as realistic as
Yes.
possible, while not actually degrading the recording or the video. So it's kind of that optimization aspect. And I can see how
Yes.
that would be very tedious and very manual without a platform like Mod.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, really, it's about making 3D suck less. That's one of our taglines, because I'm like, there are some really grindy parts that are not fun.
Yeah. So talking about grindy. When we spoke first, you talked about how you started in a service-based, non-venture-backed state,
Yeah.
and here you are on the other side of product-based venture startup. So talk about that grind, that journey, that process. How did
Yeah.
you end up with Mod being where it is today?
Absolutely. So, I mentioned my background in interior design, which is it's less relevant to what I do today. That this is not a path I ever necessarily would have expected for myself, to be honest, but it's been a really fun learning adventure is what I'll say. Tim and I, in 2016, we were based in LA. We'd actually lived in a few places, particularly following opportunities for his career in games and movies. And a lot of that is based around incentives, right? So different places have different types of incentives, and that means that the hiring opportunities are better. And so we lived in New Orleans, Victoria, BC, Vancouver, BC, and then Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, Tim was working for a company called Two Bit Circus, where they were doing a lot of. They now have like a location based entertainment. It's like Dave and Buster's, but with VR, like much more sort of technically advanced, if you will, doing a lot more cool cutting edge stuff. And he was working with them when they were more of a project company. And he was like, "Oh, like I would love to continue working with them, but if I work on my own, I could get paid per project instead of just like a flat salary." And I was like, okay, well, if you go and find the business, we can launch this thing together, and I'll do the business side and you can do the tech side. And so he went out to a ton of meetups in LA and met a ton of people on the very early end of AR and VR, so augmented reality and virtual reality. And we got our first couple of projects in the door and started figuring out like, oh, this is really interesting and cool. And we could do all kinds of weird stuff. And it was very much, the Wild West is what I like to call it, because, you're just making things up and inventing things and problem solving for stuff that nobody knows anything about. Good luck finding an answer on Google or ChatGPT. Right.
I.e.,
And so
entrepreneurship at its finest, right?
exactly. And so, we then relocated back to Texas, which is where I'm originally from, but continued the business and focusing on how do we create a bunch of cool projects. And at that point, we were doing services that were full end to end, experiential, and typically like augmented or virtual reality based in some way. And so we did projects with KPMG, Novartis, Quantum Rehabilitation, which is the second largest wheelchair manufacturer in the world. We did a ton of other experimental cool stuff with Intel. And we really started understanding that our biggest constraint as a services company was the content side. And so for us, being early into VR, we were jumping into things like volumetric video. So volumetric video is capturing a moving person, place, or object at the center of an array of cameras, and then combining all of those camera feeds together to make a full 3D moving performance, if you will. And so it's incredibly data heavy. So a minute of video for all of the video feeds could be over a terabyte of data. Like it could get extraordinarily gigantic. And we did not know, we were working on how we, could scale this. Number one, how do you scale the processing of that amount of data? Then we worked with photogrammetry, which is similar to volumetric video, except that it's a still object, person, or place that you're capturing with many images around. And then you're digitally combining them to create a 3D asset. And again, big amounts of data, lots of processing. How do you create this content in a reasonably fast timeline with consistent results? And so Tim's background in
And
games and
content,
movies,
just to
yeah,
so content
yeah,
is specifically like 3D assets you can put into a world, whether
yeah,
animated or still. Is that
yep.
an accurate? Okay.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. For us, content, we really are talking about the pieces and parts that make up any sort of digital environment. And that could be, trees and houses and people and, rocks and sky, like all the bits and pieces that you need to make any sort of environment. Absolutely. And with that, the slowdown in sort of content creation or making the content what the client wanted was really challenging for us because every project that we had was different. Not only was a different specification for, okay, now we're going to use the Microsoft MR headset, or oh, we're going to use the Vive, oh, we're going to use an AR projection for Android or iOS. Like every machine has a different spec. Every piece of content has a different look. And we're like, wow, this is really hard. And so Tim started building that internal tool set for us. And his background in games and movies was actually particularly around automation, pipelines, and optimization. And so that was really key for us. And so building that tool itself, we realized, oh, we made the product. That's the product. That's a product, which is always fun. I think anytime you're in a services business, you're trying to figure out how can we productize? What can we productize? We have knowledge or skills or tools that we have internally that could be a stream of revenue for us, or it could be an entire business, right? There have been so many times that we've brainstormed things and I was like, nope, that's a whole other business. We can't, no, put it away for another day. But ultimately in 2020, I'd been learning about venture for probably a couple of years, going to like meetups. I went to a few sort of in office like education events at different venture firms. We were based in Austin, so there's a pretty decent venture scene. It's much more robust now than it was, 2017, right? But it was just a good learning opportunity. I was like, okay, it's very bizarre to wrap your head around the fact that people will give you money for ideas. I'm like, when I learned about venture originally, I was just like, I am slightly baffled by the risk class, like it's of investment, but also wow, and what a cool opportunity. So with that, in 2020, we actually had applied for an accelerator a few months before. We got accepted into our first accelerator, which included $100,000 in funding in Austin. And I think
What was the name of it?
honestly, Sputnik ATX. So Sputnik, like the satellite. And so Oksana and Joe have been fantastic champions of ours for many years, and we're very grateful to them for the opportunity to really explore and build this business. And I think one of the reasons that it was a good fit, because media tech is a very hard place to get venture investment. I will be very transparent that the more I've learned, I'm like, okay, this is a very challenging place, because venture doesn't really understand entertainment and media. It's all been very internal. If you think about the big studios, they there's like six companies that own everything in entertainment and media, basically. That being said, we really have relished the opportunity to sort of grow. We weathered through COVID, which was very hard for a lot of people in a lot of ways. It was very challenging for businesses. On the entertainment and media side, our business struggled a bit for sure, because there were not live productions for about a year and a half. And that made it really hard to try to convince people they needed software for production. And so we've also experimented with using our tools inside of several other industries. We've considered pivots, we've explored them. And then full circle last year, we came back to entertainment and media as being our first real opportunity and real market that our tools they were initially built for it. And, it really is the right fit right now. We've often been early to market with our solutions. So as an example, in 2016, we built a virtual reality therapy tool. It was way too early for anybody, for anything. But I'm excited about the fact that I think that we have market timing and tool built value ready to go at the same time now.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is the entrepreneurial story in a nutshell, which is
Yeah.
we were doing some stuff, and then we did some other stuff, and then we tried some stuff, and then we built some stuff, and then we changed some stuff. So uh, that process of building products, them not quite being right due to a market constraint or how you're approaching it or how you're packaging it, and then coming back to new ideas. How do you keep going in all of that with maybe the perception of I'm failing or it's not working or it's not succeeding? We need to scrap this
Yeah.
idea. We need to move on. I mean, how do you kind of have the resilience to keep going
Yeah.
despite maybe not everything magically working out how you want it to?
What I will say is I was incredibly risk adverse when we started this journey. And I was just like, it's it's hard. It's hard to, change that mindset when that's not necessarily how you were raised. What I will say is one of the tools that has been most impactful for me in flipping it from failure to learning is called the competency framework. And so the competency framework really sort of assumes that every single person, no matter who they are, you start at zero. Just because you don't know anything doesn't mean you're bad, doesn't mean you're wrong. You just haven't learned it yet. And then you're incrementally gaining competency until you can reach a mastery level, right? There is negative competency, i.e., you're doing bad things and you are doing it intentionally and you know that it's not great for people. But for me, it was really about, oh, it's okay that I don't know this thing, and it's okay that we're changing that thing because we learned something that we didn't know before. And as an example, we've our product has changed and morphed over time as we've learned more about our market and our industry and how we can potentially, penetrate and create opportunity. And what we started, everyone always has these great nuggets of wisdom, right? Where you're like, okay, sure, that sounds great. How do I do that in practice? And one example is, okay, like get more granular, get more specific, like dig down further. And I'm like, what does that mean? How do I do that? I know the thing that we have, I know how it could be applicable and who would use it and all of these things. But the reality is we were trying to sell originally, we were trying to sell a much bigger, broader use for 3D workflows, like overarching 3D workflows, not specific to any like individual piece or part or process of the 3D workflow. And it's really hard for people to wrap their heads around that because it's a huge idea. There are companies out there doing it, and as much as you're like, I'm the Uber for the blah blah, like it doesn't translate in like customer speak. That could translate potentially in like venture speak if you're talking to an investor. But they're different. It's very different. And so over the course of, the conversations that we've had, the tools that we have created, the user testing that we've run, and on and so forth, we've learned with every sort of interaction and opportunity that has been successful or not, that there was a nugget in there. There was something. And so, some of the work that we did at the end of last year, the end of 2021, was really integral in helping us narrow down where we should focus our tool set. And so our tool set has, I think we're now over 75 microservices, which is a lot. It's a lot. It's too many menu items is what I will say, right? It's overwhelming. You look at that menu and you're like, okay, 17 pages later, I have no idea what I'm ordering because what do I want? We decided that breaking it down into modules, modules.
See what you did there.
We'll play on words. Breaking it down into those modules is really important because it makes it more approachable. And so the optimization tool itself, right? It's very specific for, hey, we're helping it look better. We're helping it play back right. It's using maybe in total like a third of the tools that we have built. But it's very hyper focused, right? It's hyper focused on the meshes and the textures. Those are the two pieces that are really hard to do for optimization. And so with that, then we're like, okay, great. Then we needed to know which market was most impacted by a need for content fast. Who needs it fast? And who needs it at scale? Who needs a lot of content and they need it fast? And so that really continued to help us push toward the right audience. And virtual production, as I've mentioned, they're going through, it's a very early market and they're going through a lot of growing pains, trying to figure out how to most effectively tool up, how to most effectively, hire. And the talent pool is small because we now have 3D content across almost any vertical you can imagine: architecture, engineering, construction, retail, automotive, you name it, like they are using it in some way, shape, or form. And so because of that, it's a competitive market. So what it really boils down to is you need tools to make the people that are there more effective, whether they have that deep technical knowledge or not. And so that's where we found our place. But it took 4 years. It took 4 years for us to get to a point. Yeah.
I think what you illustrate really well is that at the end of the day, you need to be solving a pain point, a problem that a user has, and they say, oh, I have that problem. Let me use your solution because it addresses that problem. And often when I talk to entrepreneurs who are earlier on the path, they look around and they see what the output is. They see what the kind of survivor bias, if you will, of the Googles, the Ubers, the Facebooks. Yeah. And well, they have all these features and I want to build more features and I want to do this and I want to do that. And Instagram has stories and reels and all of this. And while that is true, right? The ones that win often end up stacking on more features. To get started, typically you have to find one thing, one pain point. It's not even a feature, one pain point, and then solve that really well. And then you can scale from there. And for you, it sounds like you built a bunch of features. You built 70 different, pieces that were tool sets. But then it's when you package it and you say, hey, you're having a problem with optimization of, real content. Hey, you have the problem of doing it at scale or in volume. And those are kind of the two user profiles or the two pain points that you're really addressing and solving. And now it's working. Now you have product market fit, you have customers, and it's I think you illustrate it really well. Kind of, yes, it's a journey to kind of figure that out. Yes, it's a journey to go through your competency framework and drill down. But once you find it, then you can start building back up with more features, capabilities, user stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for us, I definitely think we learned, we did it a little backwards because we were always very technically rich. We already knew that from the beginning because of Tim's, deep experience and the fact that we had already started building product before this was even a company. We what we didn't have more of was that sort of clear understanding of how to approach. I think go to market is the most painfully mysterious portion, to be honest. And I mean, I know that I'm not alone in this, but what I would say is if you go Google, like, give me a deck outline, right? Go to market is not a slide in there in a vast majority of and I was like, why can I not find a template for this? And it's because it is a very comprehensive strategy question that is much deeper than, I mean, even if you put it on a slide, it's still obviously going to be very topical, but the understanding of how to more effectively leverage those pieces and parts of how are you getting it, who wants it, why do they want it, when do they want it, all of those little granular things I think really need to be explored a lot earlier. And I feel like it's just missing from like Startup 101 for some reason, which is very sad.
I, my personal opinion on that subject is that every single go-to-market strategy is a strategy, and typically it fails, and then you try something else, and then that
True.
fails, and you
True.
just keep doing it, and then eventually you're like, well, I don't quite know why, but that thing worked. Let's do more of that. And once
Yeah.
you find one, then you can kind of spread out from there. But yeah, it's a
Oh,
it's a really
it's
hard
like
question.
social media advertising. no, no,
Just
I
keep
mean,
failing until you figure out something that works.
absolutely. I mean, to be real, I'm using ChatGPT for like strategy outlines for basically everything now. So I'm like, hey, you don't even have to really think about it. And I mean outlines. I don't go tactical with ChatGPT because I know better. But I'm very much like, just give me some ideas. Give me like the 10,000 foot view of things that I could be, should be, might be doing that could potentially affect this in the way that I'd like. And I think that, it's a really valuable resource just to sort of curate and culminate all of that thinking, give you a checklist, give you a process to run through. I love processes. I love templates. I'm like, please give them to me. And then I can just like kind of knock them out one by one and be like, that's not the thing. That is the thing. Okay, cool. This is partially a thing. Maybe.
Is
So yeah, please.
that's a question I'd love to ask entrepreneurs, and you kind of already answered it. But how do you use ChatGPT, or how do you use AI, whether other tools as well, in your daily life? What are you liking? What are you using it for? Sounds like
Sure.
brainstorming and high level kind of thought partner. Anything else that you would recommend, or tips or prompts that you found that are super useful?
I love the prompts that tell ChatGPT to stop being ridiculous. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me you don't know. Or don't tell me that you can't find that because you only have a brain span at since up to 2022. And I was like, oh, I like this. Let's teach ChatGPT some manners. uh, I loved it. I loved it. It doesn't stay, unfortunately. Every new session, you have to remind it that those are the rules. I'm like, where is that piece? Can I just put this in forever? Can this be a thing? Um, and I like the idea of also digging down. I still, if there's the, keep asking why, right? And if you're in a user interview, and that's sort of how I treat Chat GPT in some cases, because I'm like, okay, cool, but like, why? Or give me another example, or give me 27 more examples. I want to know. I want to know. I've used it for taglines. I've used it. We actually, one of my more favorite recent ones is I used it to generate a bunch of like cheeky taglines that are super nerdy that only people like in this industry are going to get. Like some similar to like make 3D suck less. Another one is like get your assets ready, and like things like, and then they go granular into like mesh things, like very nerdy tech terms that like I'm like I don't even know what that means. But Tim was like, "That's hilarious." Okay, cool. Win. And so I had it generate a bunch of these little weird taglines, and then I downloaded it as a CSV, or I copied and pasted it into a form, downloaded it as a CSV, and then I popped it in Canva, and boop, I had 30 pieces of content that I could publish. And so that's one of my favorites. I'm also seeing it, embedded into tools. And so I love that. I love when they're like, so Canva, for instance, is now has a embedded version that you can do copy, experimentation, and it'll do all the, predictive and helpful suggestions and all that kind of stuff, which is great. I've used a tool called Fuel, and fuel is they actually have a startup tool that they've launched. I believe it's in full launch now as a beta tester. And part of what they have in there is, write your own ebook. They have this entire, section around, some of the more copy style stuff. But what they're also referencing, they fed in other databases. So they have Crunchbase in there. And so it's not completely talking out of nowhere land. It's not random Google things. It's actually referencing like the startup ecosystem, the investor ecosystem, and the things that Crunchbase is feeding into this. And so it's helpful for market research. It's really been a fun opportunity to sort of see that. That being said, like our company uses AI heavily. We're more on obviously the visual side. And so that I always have to interject into the conversation that large language models are not the only kind of AI.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people,
just the wordy ones.
yeah, exactly, just the wordy ones. We don't do any NLP. We're not doing any natural language processing, like actually digging into what's being said or how it's being said, the sentiment. That's not our world. The way that we use it is to actually improve the quality of the content, so the visual quality, and then ultimately making things faster. So we use machine learning to actually train our systems to allocate like heavy. So if you have a piece of content that uses a lot of RAM, and then you have another piece of content that you're trying to process at the same time, it'll offset the content so that they start at different times. So it's a queue management system so that the RAM spikes happen next to each other instead of on top of each other and then crash your system. So queue management, things like that, making processing more efficient, making the visual quality better, and then creating things like secondary maps. And so secondary maps in real-time content or what's the skin of a digital object, essentially. So it's the shine, sheen, reflective, refractive, all of the ways that like you can change how it looks in a different environment. So an example I like to give is a highlighter. So if you have a highlighter in a room like an office, it's going to look very different than it would if you had it in a jungle, right? You have to have different qualities that you can tweak and change so that it blends into the environment more effectively. And we do automated secondary map creation for many of those bits and bobs so that it can be easily done. And so that's another time consuming thing that takes artists a lot of time to actually generate these, but they're really necessary to make the look and the quality, the final product. And that's really what they want to do is they want to go in there and they want to tune it. They don't want to actually make the maps. Those aren't fun.
I want to do the final brushstrokes, not
Exactly.
the tedious of throwing everything on and getting the parameters right.
Yep.
Where and how has fundraising shifted your approach to building a mod? And what led you to decide to fundraise, and then why do that, and how have you kind of used that capital to
Sure.
further the business?
Yeah. So our original focus with fundraising with that first $100,000 was that we wanted to transition from a service-based business to a product-focused business and not worry about sort of the nitty-gritty of like client management and all of the things that come with services. And so for us, it was pretty imperative to get that initial funding so that we could shift focus fully. And from there, we had over the course of the last 4 years, we've raised 1.8 million in funding, and it's been through a few different mechanisms. So most of our initial funding was venture funding through our first investor. They continue to support us, and like really, and I mean that in the most amazing way because COVID was really challenging for a lot of businesses. Right, our market, as I mentioned, all but disappeared for about a year and a half. And, our investors were still like, we are very bullish on the fact that you guys are creating something that is amazing, that is going to be successful. And we want to continue supporting you in doing that. And so, we would not be here if it weren't for their support, to be honest, like as a company. And so I think that was really amazing from them to show like, yes. And this is a great example of like that founder market fit. And it really is, especially in the early days, like you're being invested in as a founder. Your idea is great and fine and dandy, but it will shift, it will change, and you need to have people that believe in you and will support you, through the good times and the bad times, because it is a journey. It is a journey. And ultimately, we did end up doing a small friends and family round, or a community round, if you will. I think it was in 2021. And our goal with that was really to let the folks that we have known for forever actually support us. We never did a friends and family round, because we just sort of jumped straight into venture and accelerator land. And with that, we were able to have some folks that are in our, sort of inner circle, invest in the company, for an equity stake. And so that was really fun, and interesting. I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone for everything. And it was kind of mildly successful. It wasn't a huge round, but it was a really interesting opportunity. And I think we could have done a better job with it, is what I'll say, if I had known more at the time. And I've talked to a ton of other founders that have considered it, and I will tell them, I'm like, you need to make sure that whatever you're expecting to raise, you need to be dedicating about 10% of that amount to what you're going to be doing for marketing on this, and really understanding what the barriers are for each of the different platforms. So some of them have specific minimums that you have to hit before you'll ever get a payout. So there's a lot of other hoops, and then there's a lot of reporting that has to be done that I think that people were not very clear about. And so I learned a lot. And I don't know necessarily that I would do it again for this business, but I could see it being the right solution for other businesses. Absolutely. And then more recently, we were actually funded by an organization called 43 North. They're based in Buffalo, New York, where we are currently as well. And the program here is focused on, number one, we did get funded $1 million in a pitch contest. That's going to be my fun fact from now on. Anytime we do those weird, like, cold introductions, I'm just going to be like, I want $1 million pitching. I've decided.
That's a good one. Just by talking,
Yeah.
I impressed enough people to get $1 million.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, not to say that the months of diligence or the rest of it made
Or
any
them
difference.
actually owning a piece of your company. But yeah.
Exactly. Pish posh. No, but it's a really fun opportunity. And there was, yes, I did pitch and win $1 million, but also there was a lot of process that went into that. They are a really cool organization that is focused on actually building the Buffalo ecosystem. And so they want to bring tech companies here. So the program itself is, I would say it's not quite an accelerator per se. I don't know what they officially call it, but it's like Accelerator Plus. So they don't have like a 5-day a week curriculum that you go through. They have support for businesses that are sort of that next tier. So they will help you with hiring. They'll help you with sort of general graphic design. They'll help you with like process, introductions into the community, that sort of thing. And so it's the next level of program in my mind. And so that was one of the big draws for us, was like, oh, we can extend our team without having to necessarily hire everyone in-house. And that's been a big draw. We've worked with them for recruiting and hiring throughout the entire year that we've been here. And that's been amazing to take that off of our shoulders, to be honest. And with that, they are also, anticipating that you'll be hiring locally, building the ecosystem here, and creating, reinventing Buffalo as a tech hub. And so they've been a really fantastic program, and the community here really rallies behind the businesses. So I think it's a really interesting and unique opportunity for companies that are a fit for Buffalo. So it's been a winding road of very strange process that none of it really made any sense, to be honest. And also, I think I was under the delusion that once you're in venture, it's easy to get venture, and that's not really true at all still. And I say this, having worked to raise funds when it was easy, I'm going to say in quotes, right? And I know that the landscape now is much different. We are not currently fundraising, and we don't anticipate fundraising until we have the metrics that can back that up effectively. And, we are working toward that diligently at this moment. But the reality is, I also know that it's not a founder friendly market, is what I'll say. And so until we can put our best face forward in a way that really, is meaningful, I just don't think that it's worth my time, right? Because as a founder, as the CEO, it is my job to go and fundraise. I don't think it's worth my time to attempt yet to go fundraise again for another round. Technically, we've I would say that we are a seed stage company based on all the wibbledy wobbledy versions of fundraising that we've done. But it also depends on who you ask. 1.8 billion is definitely still in the seed realm, and we're anticipating that probably Q2 of next year there will be another fundraise that we approach.
Appreciate you kind of laying that all out there because fundraising is one of those things where it sounds like a silver bullet. It also sounds like I have no idea where to start. And both of those things are true. It's not a direct linear path.
Nope.
And it's also not a silver bullet. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and
Yes.
results are not guaranteed as well. So it's important for other founders or people considering entrepreneurship paths to kind of know the it's a weird journey, and it doesn't always
Yes.
make sense. And you want to use it as a tool strategically when it makes sense, but also be mindful to not be overly dependent on it.
Absolutely. And I'll just briefly add to that it is important to understand the time commitment of fundraising and to absolutely use it strategically, right? I think in the past it's been very boasty, if you will, like, oh, I just raised a $12 billion round, and I'm like, well, what is your company's valuation? How much of your company do you still own? Um, like in reality. And so I think that it's also super important to remember, conserve your equity. Think wisely about how you're taking on funding. Look at alternative funding methods too, because I think for the right companies, things like SBIR grants from the government could be a great path to revenue that's non-dilutive. And there are a ton of other mechanisms out there. That's just one that sort of pops to mind first. And then I'll just also mention that it's hard. Like, find somebody to talk to, because somebody who's been on the path, and find your personal champion, because you're going to need the morale support. Um, and also, as you're going into the investment community, find your champions there as well that can maybe help you, navigate. What I will say is, I think the reason I mentioned this earlier, that I think media tech is a really challenging place to get venture funding. The reason I fully believe that the reason that we have venture funding is because we had champions inside of the two organizations that are our primary funders that have direct experience with entertainment and media, and that is worth its weight in gold. Having people that really truly understand the depth and the application and the opportunity. So make sure that you're targeting the right types of investors. You're targeting, and you're doing your research. I think that's the piece that people often forget. They just sort of jump in, and it's a lot more research than it is, or it should be a lot more research before you even start pitching.
I think that's extremely solid advice of doing the diligence. You have to do diligence on investors just like they have to do due diligence on you. To close this out, maybe we take a shift towards the personal tact. How has your relationship with your husband changed being co-founders and business partners?
The golden question. It's so funny because there are so many people that are like, I it's either one or the other. Like, oh, I want to run a business with my husband, or we already do, or I could never work with my spouse. It is like complete polar. There's nobody who's in the middle on that. They are one or the other. For us, it was a natural fit because I had, some of the sort of fundamental business skills that were needed. I've definitely grown significantly. I would not say I had a CEO mentality when we started our companies, but over the course of 8 years of working together full time, I have definitely grown into the role and created a lot more opportunity to yeah, just embrace the what needs to happen from me as a leader in our company, right? And my, on the flip side of that, I've also continued to try to support him professionally in the best way that I can. He really is he's a great fast learner. He is a super learner, and he will always continue to take on more and more and more. He loves work. He loves invention. He loves experimentation. He doesn't love some aspects of his role currently, and we're working to find people to replace him in those. And that is also challenging because he is so deep in the product creation, invention, that it's hard sometimes to separate those things. And so that's the same thing for our relationship in general. It's hard to separate the things. So I definitely have at times said things like, stop talking server to me. Just because like he's an audio processor, and so he talks about everything. That is great for me actually, because I am able to learn a lot. I'm able to learn so much. And I think that a huge piece of the success of how technically deep I can go is because he is willing to talk and explain and go in depth on things, or even just give me like the topical on things. And so that's been really helpful in that world. But we, as parents, as co-founders, as a married, couple, we have it's hard. Boundaries are really hard. They're really hard, especially when you're very much like all in on what you do. And we definitely have times where we have to remind each other that it is it is personal time or it is work time. And it's challenging, but I think that it's also a fun adventure. What I've seen over the last few years, especially with everyone sort of going home right during the pandemic, and reconnecting with their family in a way that they potentially hadn't in a long time. I saw like a resurgence of family businesses, and I really think that like the new family business is a really cool key to success for a lot of companies, a lot of industries, a lot of opportunities. And I think that there's a power in being able to communicate on so many levels with someone. And so I think it's a superpower of ours that we have all of these things together, and we're hopefully successfully executing all of them. Not simultaneously, but at some point they're successful.
That is the great unknown. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to learn more about ModTech, you and Tim's journey, where should they find you to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. modtechlabs.com is the business website, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Alex Porter. I have a blue bubble in my blue circle behind my head. And I'm always happy to chat with others, especially if I can help enlighten a little bit of the journey, and make it a little bit easier. I love doing that.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you.